At this time now, I believe we're going to do question answer. Yeah, we're going to do question and answer, okay? So, this is, I know that the time, the latency from the broadcast to you guys is probably about 7-8 seconds. So we're going to have a time of question and answer, so you guys can go ahead. It could be comments too. Comments, questions, and comments or questions. Okay, here we go. So first question is from Elsie, okay? What is your source of motivation to change, and where can I find it? Okay, so I'm going to say recently, within the last year, I've had a large motivation to change. Okay, a large motivation to change. And one of the things that happened in my life was self-realization of my certain behaviors that I had that were actually hurting people when I thought it was actually helping. And that motivation was, I want to stop hurting people, and I want other people to also do the same. So one of the motivations I have right now to change is not just to help myself, but also, because I know where I was at. I saw what I was doing and how toxic it could be. But also, I saw that, if I'm like this, what can I do? And that's why one of the motivations I have is for myself, and one of the motivation is to help other people too, to not hurt others. Right? And this is especially for myself because I was in a position of leadership. I'm very, very into leadership, and I've been studying it for like the past year right now. So for me, this is one of my big motivations that I have right now. And I'm sure as time goes, my motivations will change. All right. Thank you, Elsie, for that question. Another question from John. Okay. Do we know what platform? Is everyone from is from Facebook, right? Everyone's from Facebook. Oh, so John here on Facebook, he says, I've been having issues of procrastination, but for many years I couldn't stop this habit. Is there a way to help me? Okay, so when it comes to procrastination, this is what you call a normal habit of regular people in the world. It's not like very few people are studying for their finals 3 months before. And if you are, we'd be like, oh, you nerd. Oh, you're such a geek, whatever it is, right? But reality is this, we've learned it since we were young. And that's why one of the hard parts is, John, I'm not sure how old you are. Right? I'm not sure how old you are, but for so many decades or years, you've been in that habit of living in that way. Which means this, like you got to think about this very carefully. If I've been doing something for 20 years, remember, you have to learn that first step is about what? Is about understanding the perception of time and change. If I've been doing something for 20 years, how can I change that in like what? What is our expectation, right? You're 16 years old. Okay, so you have more hope. No. Is it 16 years old? Or that's someone else? It's a different person. Okay, so John at this time, so however old you are, you've been doing it a certain way, and to change someone's old habits is very, very difficult. Which means what? One thing that I've actually learned from the Bible is this one thing. In the beginning, when you're fresh, it's very, very easy to change. Very, very easy, right? So I'll give you an example from the Bible. We don't have the verse for this, but it's in Matthew chapter 9, verse 16 and 17, right? And basically it says that if you have new wine and poured into old wineskin, then it bursts, right? And like, okay, what the heck does that mean? Well, what happens is in the past, you have these wine skins and you put wine in it and you plug it up, and then you know how it ferments. Like grape juice ferments to become wine, which means it begins to expand. And what happens is, as the wineskin gets old, it begins to become leathery and cracked, and it's no longer flexible. So if you put new wine in, what's going to happen? It ferments again, but since it's no longer like malleable, since it's no longer flexible anymore, and it's old and dried, like dried leather and parched, it just, like it bursts, right? In the beginning, when you're new and fresh, it's very, very easy to change your bad habits. But as you kind of do it longer and longer, like if you do something longer, you become numb to it. And the example I give to you is the first time I stole something in my life when I was probably 12 or 13. I don't remember. And then as I begin to steal more and more, do you get numb to it or do you feel more guilty? Reality is you actually get numb to it. Like it doesn't, like you don't feel the guilt anymore. It's like, okay, well, I stole this. Well, it's not really a big deal. And you kind of justify all these things. In the same way, too, when you procrastinate, you know it's bad, but you get to a point you're numb to it, right? And probably you'll be like, oh, I'm procrastinating. Why am I like this? It's probably because you might have procrastinated something and you could have done much better on it, or you failed something because of the procrastination. So now you're thinking about, how do I change? And because if you cannot do it on your own, you have to work with someone. And this is something you should do, right? It's just like when it comes to counseling between two people who are fighting. If there's two people fighting, they're basically just going to say their own sides. You need a third person to come in to see both sides and help people realize what's going on and each other's perspective, right? And in the same way, too, for yourself, you need to put yourself into an environment where you can change, right? But for instance, one of the reasons why you procrastinate is because you fall asleep too much. Then you shouldn't study in your bedroom. Doesn't make sense. You got to change the environment, right? You got to work with someone and work with someone to help you with that also. And that's, there's no easy way to do it. But if you've done it too long, you need to find someone on the outside to help you with it, okay? Okay, next one, James. What are a few action points that you can recommend me to attempt taking action on something that can change my life? A few action points. Well, it's kind of very generalized because you say you can recommend me to attempt taking action on something that can change my life. Well, kind of like the three things we talked about today, but you need to figure out your clear reasons first. If you continue the way you are or the thing that you're doing, how is it going to affect yourself and how is it going to affect the people around you? One second, I got to sneeze. Okay, so I'm back. I sneezed off screen. Well, I hope I was off screen. Was I off screen? Okay, good. Okay. Well, you know I sneezed, but either way, right? Few action points is I would go through those things, right? Like number one is understand your perception of how much time it takes, and time is, one second. I'm not crying. This is just, and this is not COVID-19 either. Okay. Right, so I would think about what is your concept of how much time you want to change? Because sometimes people are going to put time to it. Like, oh, I need to change by this year. And the answer is, how do you know? Like, what's the time on that change? Change takes different time for different things, how big, no matter how big or small it is, right? Second thing is, you should write in paper the clear things about how this is affecting you and your relationships, people around you, if you continue with that habit or the thing you want to change. And then also, you have to think about the future is, if I change, how much better would it be, right? And then, of course, you do want to go to your last point, is whatever you want to change. Like, for instance, we were talking to John before about not procrastinating. Like, one thing we could say is if falling asleep was something that would always hinder him to procrastinate, then his habit should consistently be never study in my room, right? If he always procrastinates when he's by himself, then you should make a habit of studying with someone else, right? And you want to make those action points that are relevant to the change that you want to make, right? So, some of those action points, I know, James, you're 16. This is awesome that you're thinking about this at such a young age, because you'll be able to change much quicker than me, who's like more than double your age. Yeah, I'm gonna be struggling with it a lot more than you are, right? But it's great to do it when you're younger, but you need to make small, actionable items that you can do right away. Right away. Or else you're going to funny thing is you'll procrastinate the change until that desire comes up again, right? So think about what you want to change, make small, actionable items that are relevant to that change, and start it right away. Like, if you want to start to wake up earlier, then set your alarm 5 minutes earlier, and that's still waking up earlier. Okay? Even if it's 1 minute, it's still waking up earlier. You have to do something simple and actionable and not many. Right, just do a few simple things, okay? I hope that helps. We see Sally. Oh, who's next? Is it Sally or Hannah? Sally, right? Sally also on Facebook. Well, we're only broadcasting for Facebook today. Oh, and we have also Instagram too, right? But Sally's asking, why do I need to learn about the Bible to change? Okay, that's a good question. So it's like, why do I have to learn about the Bible to change? Well, here's the thing. Why did I bring up the Bible today is because the topic is, how can I change? And the result of people that are in religion is very drastic and very dramatic, right? And here's a very interesting thing. Have you ever heard of AA, like Alcoholics Anonymous? Alcoholics Anonymous is for people who are alcoholics. They're addicted to drinking. They can't stop, so they go to AA. And they have like a 12-step program. But guess what one of the steps is you have to believe in God. You have to have a religion. because it literally helps you change. It's recognized as something where people will see someone says, what made you change so much? And sometimes you'll hear you'll hear religious people like, oh, I believe in God now and this, and it really made me think different about my life. And it's true, right? We're not looking at something as in something that's not factual. We're looking at something that's really happening the people who change very dramatically, very drastically, a lot of it is from religion, right? And that's why we're studying it to see how does that happen. Now, that's one of the reasons that why I'm teaching you today through the scriptures is because it's something that actually happens from the scriptures, right? So, for you too, why do you need to learn about the Bible? Everyone has different reasons. Everyone has different reasons. Some people don't want to, and that's fine, right? But there are so many successful things, and of course unsuccessful, but there are many successful things that are happening through the scriptures that help us and allow us to change too. Right? So today I brought it about because our topic was about change. Okay. Next one. How do you resist temptations? Wow. Okay. Well, it depends this is Hannah, right? Hannah says, how do you resist temptations? Resistance means what? Resistance means to push away, to resist, right? To push. Like I'm resisting against it. And one thing you have to do, you do have to understand is it depends on the level of I'm not talking about maturity as a human being, but maturity in whatever you're going through. Like say, for instance, for me, when it comes to faith, I could be immature in faith and still be 40. It's possible, right? You can still be immature mentally and still be 40 physically, right? So you have to look at the maturity of the things you're dealing with, and if you have to recognize what level you're at. If you're very, very young, then the best thing to do is to cut things off and don't be around those things, right? Like for instance, if I'm gonna quit smoking, I better stop hanging out with people who are smoking all the time. It just doesn't make any sense, right? When you're first starting, the temptation is real because it's in your face all the time. They're blowing it and you're like, oh, I'm so tempted, right? So the first thing, if you're very young and you're starting to these temptations, you have to cut things off. And that's normal because that's what we do to children. No more candy, no more this, no more that. Why? Because it's unhealthy and they don't know how to control it. As you get older and more mature, what do you realize about yourself? You realize who you are, you realize your strengths, and those people can still hang around with people who smoke and they won't be affected by it, right? So it's about where you know yourself in that area, of what level you're at in that area. If it's about smoking, and if I was a heavy chain smoker, I'd probably never hang out with people who smoke just because it'd be too tempting, right? And it all depends where you know yourself, okay? Let's go to Ignatius. Ignatius, what do you feel about the coronavirus? Well, I feel that it's bad. Okay, but no, I'm actually not sure what the question is. What do I feel? I think Ignatius, if you can, I'm going to get back to Ignatius. If you can give me a little bit more, be more specific about the question because it's very, very general. Like, what do I feel about it? It's like, I don't think it's a good thing. It's a virus. It's a pandemic. I can tell you those things. It's very unfortunate that over 1,400 people, probably over 1,500 people that have died now. And yeah, like I would think it's very unfortunate, but I'm actually not sure it's a very general question, so I'm not sure if I'm even answering what you want. So Ignatius, please just be a little bit more specific, and then I'll get back to your question. Okay, let's go to, Indonesia. We have Wijaya. Okay, if I said it wrong, forgive me. Wijaya, I'm not sure. But Indonesia, Wijaya, okay? I can't change my environment. How do I grow and change where everyone is so bent on money and success? Okay, so one thing you might want to think about is, like, say your environment is everyone's bent on money and success. One thing is, you might want to change your perception on money and success, meaning having money and being successful in the world is actually not a bad thing. Right? To be successful in the world is not a bad thing. Or else we'd say bad things about rich Christians. Right? If I'm talking about faith, then are people who have a lot of money and successful, are they bad people? And the answer is no. Are they not successful because they have money and they're like successful with materials? And the answer is no, they're still successful in that area. Right? So if you start to think that those things are bad, like money is bad, and having that type of success is bad, then it becomes something where you don't want to hang out with anyone. It's like, oh my gosh, all they think about is this, and this, right? But you have to realize is money and success is not really a bad thing. It's not. Because what if you become successful and you have a lot of money and you use that to help tons of people, right? You build like monuments, or not monuments, like you build, like for myself, if I had that much, I would be building churches, or I would be helping the poor, or I'd be helping out people who are in need, which means that my money and success actually becomes something that's beneficial, right? If you look at it too bad, right, like money and success, then it actually becomes a detriment to you. So now the next question is, I can't change my environment, and that is true. And actually, in most cases, you can't change the environment, but you can change the people in your environment. You can. Which means, like, for instance, if I'm someone who doesn't like to go to a nightclub, and in my environment, the people that I hang out with, they're all going to nightclubs, then I can't change my environment, but I can change the people I hang out with. I can change the people that and honestly, yes, in your environment, you might have a lot of people who are really bent on money and success, but think about it. Not everyone is bent on money and success. There are people out there just like you who don't want to focus on those things. And it's good that you can find them. You'll be able to find these people too, right? So you can't change your environment with these people, but you can't change the environment around you. Like, I know that in some countries in Asian countries, it's like education is like so crazy, right? In America, education is good, but we also recognize is like not everyone that goes to Harvard is successful, and not everyone who goes to a junior college is unsuccessful, right? It's just the way that you see things, the way that you understand things. And one of the things I did talk about today is changing your perception, or changing the way you see things is very, very important, right? So I hope that, if you can find not better people, just find different people that kind of connect more with you of what you like. Yeah. And then you won't be, oh, these people are so much, I want to change, but they're so bent on this, right? But one thing that I find very interesting is like when I do talk to people who are very, very successful, I do pick their brain, and I do try to find out how they became successful. Because the one thing I know for sure is, even though the skill may not, like if I'm learning how to play basketball, that skill is not transferable to work. But the mentality I use to become good at basketball, that's transferable. And that's why I do like to talk to people who are successful, because there's something there that's different than other people, and I want to learn that so I can be successful in my area. Okay, I hope that helps. Okay, let's go to Rena and Faith. Is that two people? Or the name Rena Faith? Rena Faith is one name. Okay, Rena Faith, and she's from Malaysia? No, sorry. From Singapore, I'm assuming. Okay, Rena Faith, I'm not going to assume anything. So how do you constantly remind, and motivate yourself to be patient? Well, one thing that when you go to people who do success lectures and stuff like that, how do you remind yourself is, one thing that you don't want to do is leave it up to your brain. Like, all right, I got to keep reminding myself. So at that moment, you remind yourself, but later on, what's going to happen is you're going to do tons of other things, and you're going to be like, you totally forgot about it. And that's why people have symbolic things that they have that remind them of what they want to think about. Something physical, right? For instance, someone wears an elastic band, and that elastic band will tell you, patience, be patient, right? Because that's symbolic, like, all right. And some people, they have like, not a tick, but it's like they do an action where they hit the elastic band like this, reminding you, be patient, be patient, be patient. Some people have those, what do you call those rubber bands again? Those, like, Live Strong, WWJD, you have those, they're wristbands, right? Some people will buy a wristband. It has nothing on it, but it reminds them of, I've got to be patient. Or you could be more obvious, and you can, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you always look at? And it's usually yourself or your phone, which means on your phone, the first screen, put reminder, be patient, right? Or some people, if they want to, they can actually put it on their mirror in the bathroom. Why? Because you're always there. right? Two things you always look at is the mirror and your phone, right? And that's one way you can remind yourself also. Yeah, the hard part is you can't leave it up to your brain because your brain has like a million things it's going through during a day. And when you're focused on something, you're not going to think about it. And that's why it's good to always have some type of trigger or some type of symbolic thing that you have that reminds you constantly of the thing you're trying to remind yourself about, okay? Okay. I hope that helps. Oh, from the Philippines. Great. Oh, okay. Justin. Justin from KL. Justin, I think I know a couple Justins there. Okay. How do you know when is the time to change? It's hard to ascertain. Okay. This is something that's actually different from person to person, but you will know definitely that it's time to change when something shocking or major happens. Because you know for sure, right? Like I said before, is your wife says, I want a divorce. You're like, I gotta change, right? That's something that's guaranteed. You know it, right? But also you have to kind of think to yourself is, if you want to be healthy and change, this is very interesting. I want you to think about this. Very philosophical is, it means you must always be changing. The only time you say to yourself, I gotta change, means that for a long time you haven't changed. And that's why you shock and say, oh, I gotta change. But if you're constantly changing, step by step, bit by bit, you'll never get to that point where you're like, oh my gosh, oh, the striking realization, I have to change, right? And that's why the best way to do it is to constantly change. Just like when we look at the Bible verse saying about the mustard seed, it's something that's taken care of every day, right? And when you're taking care of that tree, it comes out and starts to grow. But imagine you stop taking care of the tree, and then you look at the tree and it's dying, and you're just like, oh, I gotta water the tree. You gotta water it because you didn't water it before. But if you kept watering it, you'd never have to worry about this great change. Change is slow and consistent, and you want to kind of get yourself into that habit. Instead of searching for, I got to change this, I got to change this, I got to change this. One of the things that probably my pastor that I learned from, he says, he told me, he's like, one of the number one thing that you have to do in life is learn. You just got to constantly learn, right? When you keep learning, you keep changing. But if you stop learning, you stop changing, and then when the poo hits the fan, then you're like, oh no, I gotta change all of a sudden, right? So I hope it doesn't get to the point where it's like, I've gotta change. When it has to do with relationships, one suggestion I do give when it comes to relationships between two people is you should have very, very heavy and good communication and very open. That whenever there's something that it's easily able to talk to. It's much easier to talk about small things than it is to talk about large things that have been like steaming for so long. And, try not to get into the habit of, oh, come on, it's so small. And the answer is yes. Because it's small, it's easier to change and talk about. Don't go into it's too, really? You're going to bother me about this, right? No, you have to be calm, you be open, trusting, and have that good communication with people. Cool, thanks for the question. We're going to go over to Clarice Chu. Clarice, in Singapore, says, hi, Sky. How do I know which change to pursue? Okay, I don't want to dedicate my life to changing for a goal that is actually not so important. Okay, well, you got to understand that there's different types of change in life, okay? Now, if you're thinking about some type of change that's really big, like, I want to be an engineer, and that's like going towards a certain position, right? I want to be an engineer, and it's going to be hard to change. The changes that you probably want to work on all the time is usually change of yourself, your character, what your goals and visions are, reinventing yourself, learning new things. Like those are the types of things that like for instance, if you want to change, sometimes people want to learn a musical instrument. Sometimes they'll learn a sport. And that's change. That's for health. However, it's not like, it's not like something that's going to, like, oh, I'm going to dedicate. Like if you learn an instrument, it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to dedicate my life to the violin. But I don't want to, but it's not that important. And the answer is, sometimes you actually have to look into why things are important for yourself. And I do believe personal time and personal hobbies are very important, as long as they're healthy hobbies. How do I know which change to pursue? One thing that I would suggest is you could prioritize what types of change you want. Like what is most important. And don't put necessary things as as things that are unnecessary. Like for instance, just an example is eating, right? You can't really change, like, do I eat or not? Right? And the reason I'm giving this example is because sometimes people put on a priority list of things that you have to do no matter what. Like you should be doing it no matter what, but they put them into their priority list. The things that you have to do, look at those things in the priorities and change those things, the things that you must do, like they're for sure. And then there are certain things that you can take your time with. Like, for instance, what job do I want? And you can take your time. No one says you have to find your job by the end of your 4 years of university. No one says that, right? Take 5 years, take 6 years. Why? It's your life, and it's better to take an extra 2 years than to be miserable working there for 40 years. It's better to be happier and work for 38 instead of being miserable and work for 40. So, there's some things that you can take your time with. Right, so later on we can have another session on this, but it's good to figure out what type of goals that you're setting, and sometimes you don't need to set it right now, but you could still work on it. Yeah, and there's like other things that are more valuable right now. Okay, Hannah from Singapore says, "Are some changes unrealistic?" This is the last question. Last question. Are some changes unrealistic? And the answer is yes. Like, I want to grow 10 more centimeters. I think it's unrealistic. So the question, I need a little bit more detail. Because you could have something specific, and it could be unrealistic, but I do also want you to separate between a vision and a goal. Right? A vision. A vision is something you want to attain in the future that's usually unattainable. Like every company, great organization has a vision. Like, for instance, I know a church that says to spread the gospel to every single person in the world. Will that ever happen? And the answer is probably not. But it's a vision that we all want to fulfill, and we'll push towards it, and most likely you'll never attain it. Right? So a vision is something you're hoping and looking forward to in the future that you may never attain, but it's inspiring and motivating enough for you to do it. A goal, right, would be, those can get unrealistic if you start, those can get unrealistic. Like, I hope that I can change into a horse. It's pretty unrealistic. Yeah. But I'm sure you're not thinking about that, but you do want to think about those things in a very realistic way, but also talk to other people who've been in that industry or who are in that area or who've done it before and what it requires to do so. Because a lot of things that we think are unrealistic but are actually realistic. And on the flip side, there are some things we think that are realistic but are actually unrealistic. So I do think it's something you should sit down and talk to someone about who's like more expertise in that area, and it'll be very, very easy for you to kind of get a better a measure of what is realistic and what isn't. Okay? Thank you so much, everyone, for this wonderful time of Q&A. I hope that everyone had a great time.